least we fixed favorite enemy with Hunter's Mark.
You motherfucker! Hi, and welcome back to the Trying Not to Lose My Shit Challenge Impossible Edition. Why, you ask? In 5.5e, WotC remade and rebalanced every core class in the game. And thankfully, too, since it was about time we got an upgrade to the core Ranger class instead of relying on the 8 optional variants of its features that Tasha's gave us, just to feel somewhat useful. My voice is actively cracking with just how mad it makes me. The reason for all these variant features is that the 5e Ranger was notoriously situational, and at most times underpowered. At level 1, you got your 2 staple features, Favorite Enemy and Natural Explorer. Favorite Enemy would allow you to choose a creature type. You could then recall information and make survival checks to track those creatures easier, with limitations placed on humanoids. Plus, you got to learn their associated language. Not horrible in all honesty, but it does nothing in most campaigns, unless you plan to track every main boss encounter in your game. I think the best thing this does is allow you to get an extra language, and even then, most languages don't come up a ton. Overall, pretty mid feature, but you do get Natural Explorer at the same level. So, is Natural Explorer any better? It's worse. Yeah, it allows you to travel easier, in one specific biome out of 8 that are listed. So being generous and assuming that every biome is spread out evenly across your world, you've got a 12.5% chance of ever getting to use this, just to traverse terrain a little bit faster and safer. This is it for the rest of the game, by the way. Save for a few abilities and whatever your subclass brings, you just get more of this. At least it slowly becomes more likely you'll get to use these features, I guess. Then there's Hunter's Mark. It's a level 1 spell that's effectively meant to act like a ranger's signature spell, like how Divine Smite is to paladins. But the issue with it is that it's a concentration spell that can't be upcast or deal any extra damage ever. Until the game ends, you're only dealing an extra 1d6 of damage on a hit. On top of that, it's pretty much just a worse hex. Speaking of which, I may have gotten the mechanics of hex wrong in my first video, so oopsie. So how does the 5.5e Ranger stack up? Well, they did better. If by better, you mean they actually doubled down on Hunter's Mark. Plus, they completely got rid of preferred terrain and kept favorite enemy. Oh, but they couldn't just make that a better feature. No. What they actually did was make it a feature about how you always have Hunter's Mark prepared and that you can cast it a certain amount of times a day for free. Okay, but surely this means that they made Hunter's Mark useful across the game, right? No, it's the same with 1d6 damage as before. Oh wait, I lied. It actually increases to 1d10 damage now. At level 20! The only other improvements this feature gets from the core Ranger class are at level 13 and level 17. Because, you know, plenty of games make it that far. All these features let you do is not break concentration at level 13 and then gain advantage on attacks against marked creatures at level 17. This should have been usable back in tier 2. And because of the backlash from Rangers still sucking in the new edition, Wizards had to start catering to the spell even harder because they couldn't just backtrack anymore. They made their bed, and they had to lie in it. And unfortunately for them, they decided that somehow putting nails on your fitted sheet was the best way of holding it onto the bed. Now most of the good subclasses grant you some very minor damage improvements and a benefit to using Hunter's Mark, which, I mean, good, but why are we catering so hard to a spell that nobody wants to use beyond level 6? And since it's still a concentration spell, you effectively have no other spells that you can use in the game since it's so heavily incentivizing the use of Hunter's Mark. Between levels 1 and 20 as a ranger, there are 7 non-concentration damaging spells for you. 7. You know how many more damaging spells you have that have concentration? It's 13. 65% of your spells that deal any kind of damage are spells that you can't cast while you have Hunter's Mark up. The game is trying so hard to get you to use Hunter's Mark, but it's actively competing against your entire spell list. It's just so depressing. Okay, so what do we do to fix this? The Ranger is also definitely suffering from an identity crisis, since the flavor is the exact same of taking half levels on Druid and half levels on Fighter, all without any of the benefits. So we're gonna need to look for some good sources of inspiration elsewhere if we want to see a good Ranger in action. No, I've already got that. That's not even a Ranger. Okay, now we're not even in fantasy anymore. Can there please just be something that represents a good Ranger? Holy shit. Yeah, Larian got it right with Baldur's Gate 3. And that's because they don't have 8 different biomes for you to wander through, hoping maybe one of them will work for, what, traveling? You know, something you can already do instantly? Yeah, so now it's all about passive abilities, like having resistances to certain damage types, like cold or fire, thanks to your character's history. Along with these passive abilities, they also changed up how the favorite enemy thing works. Instead of choosing a creature type to be better at tracking, they gave you an archetype of hunter. Choosing one of these abilities gives you some proficiencies and maybe a cantrip that goes along with your archetype. With these being the core features that get expanded on and brought back as levels progress, it just feels so much better and more customizable. And if it's one thing the D&D community loves, it's customizability. I mean, look at the Warlock. So let's improve upon this and take it all the way to level 20, and maybe fix Hunter's Mark on the way. So let's start with the 5.5e version. I know, it's not great, but it's a solid base to work in for the new edition. So starting at level 1, you get your favorite enemy. But just like how 5.5e rewrote the mechanics of favorite enemy, so too did I, mostly with the help of Baldur's Gate 3. You get to pick one of the following archetypes to be: a bounty hunter, a knight, a mage breaker, an upholder of sanctity or reverence, or a natural hunter. Being a bounty hunter lets you spend a minute studying a creature, making it your favorite enemy. What does that mean? Well, I'll explain in a bit. You then have an easier time trying to tie up that favorite enemy. If you're a knight, you can choose evil or good humanoids. You get to consider that creature type, as well as dragons and giants, as your favorite enemies. Also, you get real good with melee weapons and have proficiency in heavy armor. As a mage breaker, spellcasters are your favorite enemy. You also get a bonus to your saving throws against spells that you can see or hear being cast against you. Next is the Upholder of Sanctity or Reverence. You get to choose 3 evil or good creature types to be your favorite enemies, as determined by the protection from good and evil spell. Any physical damage you deal to them can be replaced with radiant or necrotic damage. And finally, the Natural Hunter, the Ranger's Ranger, if you will. Beasts, monstrosities, and plant creatures are your favorite enemies. And when you cast a spell that restores hit points, you can expend a Hunter's damage die to heal some more. Okay, what is this guy talking about? Hunter's damage? Favorite enemies? He's lost the plot. No, hear me out. Let's start with the favorite enemies. A favorite enemy is simply someone you get to deal extra damage to when you make a ranged weapon attack against them. That damage is your hunter's damage, which actually increases over time.
What a concept.
But I'm not throwing the power gamers a bone here. When you have a spell that lets your weapon deal extra damage, you can either choose to deal the spell's extra damage or the hunter's damage. You get one. So does this mean you're useless if you don't have a favorite enemy near you? Nope, that's where we bring in Hunter's Mark. But this time, it's not a spell, it's a class resource, like it should have been from the start! So when you see a creature within 90 feet of yourself, you can use a bonus action to expend a Hunter's Mark. That creature is a favorite enemy of yours for 1 minute. But the catch is that you can't move the mark to a new creature like you could with the spell version. You're limited. So you better pick the biggest thing on the battlefield and go after it. Don't even bother wasting your resources on the little minions. Not only does this give you a very direct role in each combat, but it actually gives you something other than being the kinda druid, kinda fighter as an identity. Also, little extra tidbit I forgot to add, but since the whole tracking part of the class wasn't really built in anymore, I decided to take the less important part of Hunter's Mark and just make it its own thing. Now, there's Hunter's Quarry, a first level divination spell that allows you to cast it as a reaction, which you will take immediately after a creature becomes invisible or leaves the range of the spell. You then have advantage on perception and survival checks you make to find it, just like the original spell. But now, it's got a little bit more to it. While the spell is active, you can use a bonus action to make one of those checks you have advantage on against its stealth check. If you succeed, you know exactly how far away it is from you. I feel like that's a happy medium between the old version and something like seeing invisibility without completely getting rid of its usage. Also, this does not work if it is more than 500 feet away from you, so good luck following it into another realm or through a dimension door. Alright, back to the video. You are a hunter. You are lasered into fighting one very specific target on the battlefield and you are really good at it. Level 2 replaces Depth Explorer with another masterful idea from Baldur's Gate, bringing back preferred terrain, but with a twist. You get expertise in a skill, and you get to pick a preferred terrain. You could become resistant to one of many different kinds of damage, you could start using wisdom for certain skills, or you could be very good at navigation and living in nature. All of these are something that are actually usable across an entire campaign. Levels 3 to 9 are all the same, except that you get a second preferred terrain at level 6, and a second favorite enemy type at level 9. Level 10 grants you the Tireless feature, which is mostly the same, but it now utilizes your Hunter's die since it scales until the end of the game. Level 13, Relentless Hunter, had to be changed entirely since it let you maintain concentration on Hunter's Mark. It's been replaced with the ability to regain some uses of your Hunter's Mark by expending some spell slots with an action. Plus, you get a third preferred terrain feature. Level 17, Precise Hunter, originally gave you advantage on attack rolls against marked creatures. That's different now because I think that's just lame. So what I've done is this: choose one of the 2 preferred enemy features you've chosen. The creatures from that feature that were your favorite enemies are now also your favorite foes. If you make an attack roll against a favorite foe that would miss, you can use a reaction to expend a Hunter's Mark and add 1 roll of your Hunter's damage to the roll, possibly causing it to hit instead. At this level, you've just gotten a 6th use of Hunter's Mark, so I feel like giving you something else to spend this resource on at this level is a pretty good idea. Level 18 is the same, but with the bonus of making finding a marked creature a lot easier. And then finally, the capstone feature. Level 20's Foe Slayer. Such a sick name for something that was so useless in the old version, but not anymore. You can now crit on an 18, a 19, and a 20 on your d20 rolls. And all of your favorite enemies are now considered favorite foes. 15% chance of critting on all creatures, and you're almost never missing. Way better. So, how's this? Honestly, I've been really wanting to play with this ranger as a player. And not even for the power fantasy, but for the player fantasy of being a fucking monster slayer. I know there's a subclass for that, but like, this will let you feel that all the way into the core of your class. Now, go terrorize your DMs and ask if you could finally play this class you've wanted to try for forever, but were too scared to try due to a lack of good features.